All right, so this tutorial is going to cover how to create a series of program blocks in Rhino that we use in architecture to create a kind of a program diagram or kind of a model that we can base the design on. And this is useful if you're just kind of moving blocks around. This could be done in concert with more of a partee model where you're studying the form of the building and exploring geometry. So really, we approach design from both directions, from the practical kind of space planning side, but also from the formal design side, the geometry side as well. So we're going to start with creating some blocks, and I'm going to look at the program here. So let's say this is, again, in your case, it's a museum gallery, so a 1,000 square foot reception lobby. So just to create a block for that, I'm going to take 1,000 square root, so we'll say 32. So I'm going to create a rectangle that's 32 feet, enter, by 32 feet. And I want to label this lobby. So to label in Rhino, you can use the dot command and then type DOT and then just type in the display text. So we're going to write all caps lobby. And I'm going to place it in the middle. I can select both the curve and the dot and type group if I want to group these together. And then what I can do is go to the next layer and create the next block here. So I'm going to go to gallery space. So this is going to be (100 foot by 100). Quick area check, so 10,000 square feet. Okay, so again, I'm going to use the dot and we'll write gallery. And the key here is not to get limited by the proportions of this or the shape itself. Don't feel like you're limited to a box, right? Like we're just understanding the scale. I'm going to select these two and hit group, type group, go to the next layer, and pedestrian walkway, we also have 10,000 square feet of that, so I can duplicate this. I hold Alt when I drag the gumball. If I want to put it on this purple layer, I can just right click the layer and say change object layer. Now it's on that. And I'm going to change the text, so I'm going to double click and write circulation. And again, not that the entire circulation in the building is going to be a box, it's just giving us a sense of scale. Restrooms, 500 square feet. (500 square root), so 22.4 we'll say, or say 23. 23 feet. 23 feet. I'm going to put that on this blue layer, right click, change object layer, and I'm going to set that to my current layer. Type dot, DOT, and we'll call this bathrooms. Again, I'm going to group these two. Go to the next layer. Loading dock, 1,000 square feet, which is the size of our lobby. So I'm just going to duplicate that. Hold Alt and drag and it duplicates it. Right click, change object layer. We'll rename this to loading dock. And then we have a cafe that's 500 square feet, same size as our bathroom. So I'm going to duplicate that by holding Alt, renaming this cafe, changing the layer. Okay, so we now have each of these on its own layer. What I'm going to do first is create a new layer using this command, move this layer up, and then I'm going to put all of these as sub layers. So I select everything, right, all of these layers, and just drag it onto this, and now these are sub layers. So what's nice about this is I can reconfigure these, I can move things around, and then I could just duplicate this whole thing, and it keeps, you know, this could be option 1. All right, so that's now option 1. I can duplicate all of this. So let's create a new layer. I can right click this. So let's say I've moved these around. I can right click this and say duplicate layer and objects, say yes to all, and now we can call this one option 2. Okay, so if I want to turn this off, now in option 2 I can, you know, move this around, play with this, and this is all two-dimensional right now. We'll make this 3D in a second, but this allows us to play with the overall program and look at it in different ways. So this is option 2. I can hide that. I can turn on option 1. So you can come up with different options with that technique. I'm going to go into 3D view and making sure I'm on the appropriate layer. Let's say this default layer, we'll call this lobby. So right click it, rename, right, lobby, gallery, circulation. Should have done this before I copied all the layers, but here we are. Loading dock and cafe. You know, we can adjust these colors to be a little bit easier to look at. Okay, so once you have each of these colored, we can go into each layer. So in the lobby layer, I can then extrude this. So type extrude, curve. So set the lobby height. Let's say we want this to be 20 feet. Gallery space, much larger. Maybe that wants to be 40 feet. So, but make sure you're on that layer. So click on the layer, extrude. Circulation, maybe this I just want to make a plane, so we can use planar SRF, click on the curve, make sure we're on the correct layer. I'm going to select it, right click on the circulation and say change object layer. And remember, you want to group all this together, so you can either select this object and you can select it and say add to group, You can use that command. Select it, add to group. So now this whole thing is one group. And every time you export an image of this or print it, you'll have the text label on there as well. So bathrooms we're also going to extrude. Make these 12-foot ceilings. Add to group. Loading dock will go into this layer. Extrude. Oh, this is outdoor. So let's just make that a plane. So planar SRF. Add to group. Cafe. Extrude. We'll make this 15 feet. Make sure we're on the right layer. Change object layer. Add to group. Okay, so this will give us something to start with. And again, this isn't necessarily the size of everything. It's not necessarily the proportions, but this gives us a sense of scale and helps us understand the program in a more logical way. And the circulation doesn't have to be one thing. This could be woven throughout the building. Maybe there's a public plaza. Maybe the bathrooms are right off of the lobby. Right, and so as you're designing the project, doing this in tandem is a really good exercise. I would never say, design a project this way because this is very limiting, obviously. This doesn't take into account the overall, design strategy, but this helps you understand the scale of the space, maybe where you want more back of house, like the loading dock. Maybe the cafe is meant to be in a public plaza or in a public space, but this lets you kind of wrap your mind around the scale of all the program and understand spatially what's going on. Okay, so when you're happy with the layout of this, and again, feel free to split any of these things. So I can select this, or I could use the command split. Click on ISO curve, and I can click on the surface I want, and if I want to split this down the middle or split it elsewhere, I can. But now this is two things. It's still grouped together, so I'm going to say select it. I can type ungroup and maybe move this around using the move command. Right. Or if I want to split this volume, I could create a vertical plane. So if I type plane, select vertical, I can create, if I hold shift, use the split command. So select this block, type split, select the cutting object, and now this is two things, but they're still grouped. So I'm going to select it, type ungroup, move this. Move my circulation maybe through the middle. So now I have two galleries. But this kind of space planning exercise is often really beneficial to not just understanding the scale, but the circulation, the sequence of space. In this case, I would duplicate this. So CO for copy. I can group all of these together. Well, before I do that, I can use the cap command. So select this, type cap. If I want to close off that box, cap. Select the text dot, select the block, and type group. spacebar to repeat the last command. So this is a kind of a space planning strategy, and when I'm happy with this, I can say we move this loading dock over here. So among understanding the program, understanding the site, so that we understand the context and how all these kind of site forces work and the axes work together, we can have an understanding of this building beyond just kind of a formal approach to it. So this works well if you're also doing a partie model or doing a concept model where you kind of approach it from both angles. So when you're happy with this, we're going to export it. You can hit Control P to print. I'm going to use, so I'll export this as an image. Or you can export it as a PDF. I can set my paper size here, 11 by 17 landscape. And then if you set that to an image, it'll keep the same size, which is nice. So make sure to use print color. You can change the size of the dots. So you can set a window. Let's set this window to include everything that's in our diagram. And then in visibility, oh, here it is. So text dot scale, right now it's set to 1. We can set this to 3 and just see how the size updates. That's too big. 2 seems adequate. And then when you're happy with it, hit print and then save this. Okay, so the way I would recommend working is, you know, set this up so that you have one scheme here, and then just right click, duplicate layer and objects, say yes to all, and now this became option 3, right? And so I can now go into this layer, hide all of this, and keep working, and now have 2 schemes that I've just created. All right, so I can have this scheme, and I can have this scheme, and I can maybe set a view. So let's say I create a view here, which you can also get there by going right-clicking, set view, named views, and this will pop up. So choose a view that you like, save it, call this perspective 1, and now when you show both options, and let's say you're moving around, you can always double click on this and go back to that saved view. Another thing I would do is set this to be isometric. So instead of having it in perspective, you can type isometric, set an angle, right, northwest, southeast, southwest, and I'm going to save this one. So I'm going to right click on this. Actually, I'm just going to hit save. We'll call this parallel. So now I can double click on that and have whatever view I was in default back to that. So I can look at each scheme, right? Option 1, option 2, and have the same view for each. So that could be useful when you're diagramming and you have multiple pages of something in a slideshow and you just see the blocks animate from one slide to another. It could be an effective tool. All right, so that's how to create a program block diagram in Rhino.